Now, I'm going to introduce to you one of my favorite pieces. Now, I want you to put this video on pause. I want you to go get this recording of Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin from Volume 3. If you've never heard it before, I envy you, because you will never feel the same after listening to this piece. Immigrant Song was released in 1970 at the Bath Festival. What was fascinating about this song was it had very interesting themes, quite unusual because it talked about Viking ideas and Valhalla. But here's an interesting fact. They were actually sailing back from Iceland. It wasn't about Led Zeppelin immigrating to England, they were returning to England. And the energy that's in there, if you listen to the riff right at the very beginning of the song, it's almost as if you can hear an engine driving a boat, ambulating you towards a home in a way, or wherever that home might have been. And so Immigrant Song comes across with its tone, with its text, with its themes, and suddenly found itself defining a new category, or a lesser known category called heavy metal. Robert Plant is a very interesting gentleman up from the north of England who had found his way into a group called Led Zeppelin. Now, it's possible to speculate that perhaps Robert Plant was thinking about his own point of arrival in England, or in the heavy metal scene in England, where he had taken the blues from the transatlantic influences. He'd taken vocal articulations, wails, and particular hollers and moans that came from the improvisatory practices of Kulthum, the Egyptian vocalist. He was writing exactly for his combo, his drum kit, the bass guitar, the lead guitar, and of course him as vocals. There were many instances when in live performances they would improvise in such a way that he and Jimmy Page would engage in a certain kind of duel while the bassist and the drummer were keeping time and keeping beat. So both of them were individuals, but they also learned how to be signature individuals in a signature collective. Now, quite a few hundred years separate Immigrant Song and the Brandenburg. There's years of history between them. There's years of cultural activity. There's genre that separates them. The way in which they use sound is different. The way in which they organize structure is different. The way in which tone and theme, however, start to make certain bridges. Just as Bach and Brandenburg was about Bach testing the waters with concerts for multiple instruments, Immigrant Song was clearly about the way in which Jimmy Page would support the entire ambience of Immigrant Song. If you think about Brandenburg, here's the trumpet giving you the first line and then supporting everything else and then coming back again. In Immigrant Song, you have that prominent line, that guitar riff that is there all the time, and there's a way in which instead of taking the lead, it's backgrounded in self and yet provides the essential signature for Immigrant Song. The reason why these two musicians and these two composers are vital in our reading of music is because a piece of music isn't a piece of music stuck in a score. It is performed by musicians. It is presented by various agencies that help make this work prominent. One needs technical support, one needs sound persons, one needs a patron, one needs a venue, all of the things that we hardly ever think about. It enables us to listen to music, different music, to show us the evolution of human endeavor. And these sounds immortalize them. So even if we are on YouTube listening to a piece of music in the 21st century, we could be listening to music 400 years ago. And that's been enabled by the way in which we've allowed music history to allow us to read deeply, to engage more intensely with the kinds of sounds that are out there, the motivations for them, the various ways and tools we use to engage with music, and how that makes us so much the richer for this multiple experience. Audiences in the present day and age have the privilege not only of attending to music when they choose to, but they also have the privilege of taking that experience with them through recorded examples on social media. There may be video clips on Facebook, there may be video clips on YouTube and Vimeo, which could take them from the present to about 1,000 years ago. This enables them to have the widest possible accessibility and opportunity to listen to all kinds of music. I came across Led Zeppelin when I was a teenager. When I listened to Led Zeppelin, I was immersed in a completely different world. I traversed the field of medievalism. I traversed the world of folk. There were aspects of the blues which were there which I never quite understood listening to it as a teenager. And then of course there was rock and roll and there was heavy metal in there which spoke to my entire body. In my later years as an academic, I have often wondered about the way in which this music could consume me in such a way. I needed to find out what it was in the sound that made me respond in the ways that I did. How are you listening to music in the 21st century? Are you able to listen to a piece of music and say, I am now transported back 500 years? I imagine that I was living in the time of Shakespeare or Bach and listening as if Bach might be. Impossible as that may sound, it is never impossible in the imagination of you, the reader. But you do need to ask yourself, you are listening in the present? What are you listening to? What are you listening out for? How are you listening to this? And can you position yourself from a distance that says, right, here was the way I might have listened to this music. Here's the way I could listen to in the present. And here is where, after a deeper reading, I might be invited to consider how I might listen to it as an audience in the future.